Imagine leaving modeling for $600 a week and going into acting as a main lead in the most popular show in human history and still hating your life. What happened to Erin Gray, and why she kept this secret while filming Buck Rogers in the 25th century? Watch the video till the end to find out. To understand just how Erin Gray ended up piloting our pop culture spaceship, you have to rewind the tape way back before the laser guns and eyebrow-raising jumpsuits. Believe it or not, she didn't start her journey on a soundstage. Nope. Before she was dodging space lasers, she was dodging paparazzi flashes. Erin Gray wasn't born in the stars. She came from a planet far more savage, the planet called Fashion Week. In the 1970s, Erin Gray wasn't just a model, she was a brilliant model. At the time, she was one of the best paid in America, thanks to the gender pay gap. She received $600 per week for her hard work, and her face was basically public property, plastered across billboards, magazines, and any flat surface with good lighting. She slayed down runways like she owned them, but despite the glitz, she was getting restless. There's only so long a person can hold an intense pose while someone else gets all the lines. So she did something wild. She packed up her perfectly contoured life and set a course for California. Not to find herself, but to find a script to actually get a chance to act. Hollywood in the late 70s wasn't exactly known for welcoming newcomers with open arms, especially not women who dared to have opinions of their own. Back then, the producers, being patriarchal men, had a definite vision of how a leading role should be. Pretty, okay, tough, fine, smart, definitely not, as it might upstage the male lead's fragile ego. Yet somehow, against all odds, Erin Gray managed to swerve around every cliché. When Erin Gray auditioned for Buck Rogers in the 25th century, the producers didn't exactly know what they were looking for with the character of Wilma Deering. In the old 1930s serials, Wilma had mostly been shuffled into the background as a love interest, a loyal sidekick, a character no one would have expected could actually make a difference worth noticing. But then, Erin walked in. She wasn't playing that game. She was calm, cool, and collected. The silent but loud confidence she had in herself is what landed her the role. When Buck Rogers finally hit the airwaves in 1979, sci-fi TV was still feeling the impact of Star Wars. Everyone wanted lasers, robots, and spaceships. But what no one expected was her, Colonel Wilma Deering. She wasn't just the hero's co-pilot. She was the hero's equal who didn't need to be rescued. She probably wrote the rescue plan herself. It was radical, revolutionary. As the lights came on and viewers tuned in every week to watch Wilma's walk, something else was brewing behind the scenes. Something the audience didn't see. Erin Gray was walking around with a burden she never discussed on camera, not during shooting, not in press interviews, not even with the rest of the cast. It was the kind of thing fans still gasped over, years later. But before we dive into that secret, let's talk about life behind the shiny spaceship sets of one of the most visually dazzling shows of its time. Despite all the sparkly jumpsuits and Doraemon-ish gadgets, the production of Buck Rogers wasn't always a joyride. There were long hours, tight budgets, and unending ego clashes. For Erin, being the lone female lead on a crew full of men wasn't just an artistic challenge. It was a political war. She had to be poised, professional, and picture-perfect in the same dirty industry where she was seen as no more than two labels, a sci-fi hacker symbol and a feminist. A label that carries a stigma even in 2025. Was she supported? No. Did she have to battle for her voice to be heard? Yes, And then, of course, there's the bigger question. What exactly was Erin Gray hiding while filming Buck Rogers in the 25th century? It was something so disgusting and suffocating that once you hear it, you will be disappointed by humanity for what they had done to her in the past. But even after the reveal, the story wouldn't end there. The legacy of Erin Gray and Wilma Deering continued until decades after the final credits rolled. Thankfully, her stories have been preserved, and when women today find out about it, they get heartbroken, and they get inspired at the same time. It was because she was the only lead female in a male-centric cast and production team, and Erin knew exactly what she was walking into. This was the late 1970s, a time when Hollywood still demanded so full appeal from its women and leadership from its men, but Erin refused to bow to these misogynist ideals. She didn't just play Wilma Deering, she was her. And that came with its own set of pressures, because you have no idea what it really was like for Erin Gray behind the scenes. Imagine being a woman surrounded by men in an industry that believed strong female character meant attractive sidekick. Every time Erin entered a scene, she had to act like a showpiece while using her authority without being labeled difficult, show emotion without appearing weak, and remain gracious even when her ideas were dismissed. It was hell that demanded her to act under hot lights on long shooting days, and sometimes the condescending tones became too much to bear. Erin had to pick her enemies carefully. She couldn't challenge everything, but she didn't stay silent either. In interviews much later, she revealed that she often had to advocate for Wilma's character, to stay true to her vision. Writers would sometimes script Wilma into romantic subplots, or in a plot where she was forced to be a damsel in distress that didn't make sense for a military colonel. Erin would push back and say, "She's not just eye candy, she has rank, she has a job, let her do it." And yet, the bodysuit that made her into an object to be marketed told a different story. The silver jumpsuit was iconic, but it wasn't made for comfort. It was so tight that Erin could barely sit down. Between takes, she had to lean against boards because the suit didn't allow for bending at the waist. She's spoken about the irony of it all, being cast as a strong female character, then being physically confined by the costume that was designed to make her look futuristically feminine. The way they presented the idea that a feminist had to wear appealing and revealing clothes to defy the norms was disgusting, because, at the end of the day, feminism isn't about revealing clothes. It's about being given the choice of whatever you want to wear. Erin didn't have a choice, but she wore it like armor, because she knew she was fighting for something bigger than herself. At this point, you would question that if Erin was such a feminist who always felt silenced, then why did she ever continue? And was there anyone who listened to her? The answer is yes and no. There were moments when she didn't feel heard, times when her suggestions were treated like noise, or her instincts as a performer were called being a sloppy actress. But Erin chose her words and moments with precision. She understood the system. She wasn't interested in burning bridges. She was interested in shifting the ground beneath them and helping the future of women. Not only that, the woman was careful enough and a good judge of character, so she also had allies. Gil Gerard, who played Buck Rogers, has spoken warmly of her even after rumors of their behind-the-scenes relationship. Don't worry. The rumors didn't say that they were having an affair or something. The rumors stated that the two couldn't stand each other. In reality, the two had a respectful, working relationship. He recognized that Erin wasn't just acting. She was fighting to change the stereotype around women in sci-fi and women overall. Her efforts were not useless. The audience responded. Letters poured in from fans, especially young women, who saw Wilma Deering as a center for a revolution. For the first time in English cinema and fiction, there was a woman who didn't need rescuing, who flew her own ship, commanded her own missions, and looked the camera straight in the eye without blinking. But this whole time, Erin was carrying something no one else knew. Even as she stood tall in front of the cameras, Erin Gray was privately suffocating. It was a revelation, and a trauma that affected her every day on set. One that shaped how she saw herself, not just as an actress, but as an object to please men. This object was responsible for something extremely precious, and she sometimes thought she wasn't capable enough to take on this responsibility. The worst part is, she told no one, not the cast, not the crew, not even some of her closest friends at the time, about this secret. So what was this secret thing that she was responsible for? And why did she keep it hidden? Just wait a little while. You'll find out soon, but before we move forward, let's pause and look at the butterfly effect of Erin's mere presence. You might be answering that it's not important, since it's not like Erin Gray is changing the future of female leads in sci-fi. Actually, she did. Before Wilma Deering, women in sci-fi were often cast as romantic interests or distraction systems. However, Erin showed that female leads could be multidimensional and independent, that they could have strength, style, competence, and compassion. You can trace her influence directly to characters that came after her: Dana Scully in The X-Files, Kara Thrace in Battlestar Galactica, and even Leia Organa in Star Wars. Erin laid a foundation where female strength was not only allowed, but expected. And yet, as history was being made on screen, Erin was quietly carrying burdens that no one could fathom. At the height of her fame, Erin Gray had millions watching her every week. She was the face of one of TV's most recognizable sci-fi heroines. She was commanding ships, delivering orders, and outsmarting villains. Audiences saw a woman in control who was untouched by fear or doubt. But was she without fear or doubt? More importantly, was she really untouched? You have waited long enough, and now you deserve to know the truth. So what was the secret that we have been teasing about all this time? While Erin Gray was leading intergalactic missions on screen, she was simultaneously dealing with the collapse of her marriage. This is not just arguing or shouting. That man used to beat her up to a pulp. She used to suffer like that at home, and then come to work where the makeup artist would hide her scars under the makeup. So why was she still in that marriage? Well, let's tell you some things about her first. Erin Gray's first marriage was to Ken Schwartz in 1968. At the time, Erin was pursuing her career in modeling and acting, which eventually led her to become what she was in Hollywood. Ken Schwartz was a successful executive in the advertising industry. Together, they had one child in 1976, whom they named Kevin Ray Schwartz. This child was the responsibility that Erin had, and she wanted to be a good mother to it, even after what she was going through. During their marriage, Erin's career flourished, but balancing her demanding career and personal life proved challenging. Erin has mentioned in interviews that her career often required her to be away from home for extended periods, which ruined her relationship with her husband. She also mentioned that after some time together, the husband became increasingly aggressive, and then he turned incredibly violent. The couple eventually divorced in 1990 after 22 years of marriage. Erin has been open about the difficulties she faced during this time, including the emotional toll of ending a long-term relationship. Even after the trauma, Erin focused on her career and her role as a mother, ensuring that her son, Kevin, was well supported. But it wasn't as easy as she had hoped. At the time of filming Buck Rogers and the divorce, Erin was a single mother. Her daughter was still very young, balancing early call times, late-night shoots, and the constant pressure of delivering perfection for every episode was exhausting. But more than that, it was isolating. Erin rarely slept. She had to organize childcare while also maintaining her physical appearance, learning lines, and rehearsing action sequences. She often spent days moving through alien landscapes in heels and spandex, only to come home and help with homework. The worst part is, throughout it all, she never brought this stress onto the set. Why keep it a secret? This is definitely a question we all have at the back of our head, and the reason is so painful and disappointing that it will shock you. Back in the day, Hollywood didn't offer grace to women who admitted they were struggling, especially not in the 70s and early 80s. An actress who showed vulnerability risked being labeled unreliable. A woman who prioritized motherhood was seen as a distraction. Erin knew that if producers thought she couldn't handle it all, they'd find someone else who could. It's so weird that in a successful television, the whole Hollywood would lose its marbles if a male lead tried to get away from a show, but they thought the women had no value and were easily replaceable. Knowing this, she used to arrive on set every morning with her lines memorized, her hair perfect, and her game face locked in, and then she gave everything she had, every single take, to make Wilma Deering believable, inspiring, and real for the women out there who thought of her as their role model. Do you ever wonder, just how did this impact her emotionally? Unfortunately, Erin has admitted in later interviews that the emotional weight of that time was intense. There were days when she felt completely alone. The industry expected her to be perfect, strong, and composed, and that's exactly what she gave them. But underneath that image, she was managing heartbreak, loneliness, and soul-crushing fatigue. She wasn't just playing a tough character. She was channeling her trauma and her longing into every scene, and perhaps that's why her performance felt so authentic. Erin wasn't just acting. She was surviving. Some people think that the secret she carried gave her a unique edge. She had something to prove, not just to the audience or the studio, but to herself. Well, this is true. But a vast majority of her fans feel like she used the character as a coping mechanism, to not feel pathetic and unwanted. We know you are curious to know whether anyone ever found out about this secret. Well, you will be surprised to know that no one knew about it, not until much later. Years after Buck Rogers ended, Erin began opening up about the behind-the-scenes challenges of that period in her life. By then, she had gained not only protection from Hollywood, but wisdom. She was no longer just a star. She was a teacher, a mentor, a speaker, and her story had power. When fans heard what she went through, many found a new level of admiration for her. Not just for how she looked or how she acted, but for the grit behind it all, a kind of strength that never made headlines, but quietly changed the way our society works. Healing didn't happen overnight. Erin eventually found deeper support systems and began focusing on work that aligned with her values. She became a certified life coach, an author, and a guiding figure for young actors trying to find their place in a ruthless industry. Not only that, she redeemed herself by advocating for women's rights and domestic violence. She also worked with organizations supporting women, veterans, and children, groups she felt drawn to because of her own journey through adversity. And through it all, she never stopped hearing from fans who still remembered Wilma Deering. Decades later, people were still writing to say, "You helped me believe I could be strong too." She was able to find joy later in her life when she remarried Richard Hisong in 1991. She now has a daughter with him as well named, Samantha Gray Hisong. Her 2 children and supporting husband have become a source of power and courage for her. For years, fans speculated, what made Erin Gray's performance as Wilma Deering so authentic, so powerful? Why did this character, on a show filled with flashy effects and serialized plots, cut through it all and remain etched in the minds of generations? We've now pulled back the curtain on Erin's life, but there's one more piece to this puzzle, one final reveal, a secret that will help you become the finest version of yourself. The secret she kept while filming Buck Rogers in the 25th century wasn't just the emotional burden of being in a violent relationship or being a single mother, or the professional risk of appearing too human in an era that demanded perfection. The real secret, one she only spoke about years later, was that Wilma Deering wasn't just a role. Wilma was her lifeline. In multiple interviews, Erin bravely declares her love for the character. It was to the point that she admitted something that stunned even her most devoted fans. Playing Wilma Deering saved me. At her lowest point, when she was emotionally and physically drained, she constantly felt like she was a walking object of male seduction. But it was Wilma who gave her a sense of purpose. In a world where everything felt out of control, Wilma was the order, strength, command. When she stepped into that costume, she stepped into herself. Not the part she had to perform, but the person she wanted to become. Erin wasn't pretending to be strong. She was borrowing that strength moment by moment, scene by scene. Until it became her own, Wilma wasn't just her source of power. When the letters from young girls came to her every day, Erin realized that Wilma was the beacon of hope for everyone. Erin Gray knew what that meant. She knew how powerful that visibility was. She also said one time that, if I could be that person for them, then maybe I could be that person for myself. After concluding her show, she spent years coaching actors, helping them find authenticity and purpose in their work. She didn't teach them how to be famous. She taught them how to be whole. She also became an advocate for women finding their careers in motherhood, often opening up about her own story, the same story she once kept hidden, to help others find strength in their struggles. She used to say, "I've been there. I've smiled through makeup and lights while my world was falling apart. I've learned that vulnerability isn't weakness. It's where